I'm sure it will come as no surprise to any of you when I say that we live in a very active and busy world and time. Some people have multiple jobs. And even in our day and age, generally when you meet someone new, one of the first questions you ask them are, "So what do you do?" We live in a culture where, unfortunately, you are what you do. Your job, your work defines you. Yet we worship a God who knows and who wants us to know that what you do is less important than what and who you are. The gospel this week has something in common with last week's gospel, in that they both sort of tend to put the focus on doing. The young scholar of the law asked Jesus, "What must I do?" And Martha in the gospel complains to the Lord Jesus that her sister has left me by myself to do all of the work, to do all of the serving. And Jesus, in responding to Martha, is teaching that what we do is not the most important thing in our lives, but also what's inside of us. The what and the who we are is at least as important, if not more important, since Jesus says Mary has chosen the better part. And it's easy for us to look at this gospel story and see it simply as a dichotomy between the doers and the prayers, the active life and the contemplative life, to use the language of consecrated life. And it's easy for us to take Jesus' words, "Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her," as a clear judgment that contemplation is better. That would be a misunderstanding of what's going on, and clearly a misunderstanding of the Christian life, because the Christian spiritual life necessarily has two parts. There's the Martha part of us, the life of work and ministry, the service we do, and the Mary part of us, the life of prayer and contemplation. And a healthy Christian must necessarily have both. They are both important. The two examples that stick out most clearly to me is, St. Benedict in his monastic rule. St. Benedict's the father of Western monasticism, and in his rule, he gave the monks the motto, ora et labora, prayer and work, that the life of contemplation and the life of work go hand in hand. In a later work, the French writer Dom Chittard wrote a book all about the necessity of having a life of prayer for those of us who are active religious. The book is entitled "The Soul of the Apostolate." The work needs the soul of prayer in order to have meaning. And we can look at the example of Jesus. Sometimes he was working, preaching, healing, curing, praying over people, traveling from here to there. He was a very busy man. And yet there were times when we would see him praying. He would go off into the wilderness, into the desert. Sometimes he would just go off to a place apart to be alone with his Father, to pray. And we all need to do the same. Every one of us, every vocation. It's not a question of, okay, am I called to a more contemplative life or a more active life? How do I fit these into my marriage? Every vocation, priest, deacon, religious, single people, married people, all of us are called to do both, prayer and work. All of us are called to have moments in our life, moments in our day, where we are Martha and moments where we are Mary. I think one of the best examples of this is St. Therese of Lisieux, who is a contemplative. She never left her monastery. She never left her convent. And yet, she is one of the she's patroness of the missions, because she had a heart on fire for the salvation of souls, and it was through her prayer and the work that she did in the convent that she supported the missionary activity of the church. In our day and age, given how the focus is on work and activity, we need contemplation today more than ever. Because too often we sort of treat our life of prayer and devotion as if it were just another task, something we have to check off of our to-do list, something that needs to get done. In a sense, prayer becomes just another form of work. But prayer is essential to our life as Christians. And in one sense, it does not matter how you pray. It does not matter what you pray. What matters most is that you take the time to be with God, that you take the time to be with the Lord, because the most important thing in having this Mary part of our lives, the most important thing is that we come to know Christ and we come to know the Father. It's in this time of prayer that we can encounter him. It's in this time of prayer that we can study his word and come to know his will. It's in this time of prayer that we come to know Christ most intimately. And he himself is the word and the work of God. And if we want to follow him, we have to take the time to get to know him. We need to be like Mary. We need to find the time to sit at his feet and just listen. Now, let me be clear. We need to learn to be like Mary, not because work is unimportant, but because our work without the foundation of prayer is powerless. Because you see, the gospel, the good news, is not a philosophy. It's not a doctrine. It's not a collection of teachings. The gospel at its core is a person, Jesus Christ, who wanted so much to be with you and to save you that he took flesh and lived among us. He became a man. He suffered all of the passion and died for you. And he gives himself to you and to each of us every time we gather for Eucharist. Today's gospel invites us. It invites us to take our time, to pause, to listen to God, to allow ourselves to be alone with him with nothing else to distract him, to simply be with him, and to allow him to speak into the silence of our hearts.